This is a quick response video to the pathless path. Hello, I think your name's Jer, but I may be pronouncing it wrong. Yeah, great, really thoughtful video. Thanks very much for that. I've made some notes, but I'm not sure if I can read them. Some stuff to do with evolution, teleology, consciousness, and complexity. And there were two specific things which I'm not sure if you wanted responses to this in particular, but these are the things that jumped out at me. One was to do with an apparent evolutionary trajectory towards increasing complexity, which you seem to be associating with value, and which you're associating after Teilhard with consciousness. And I think there's some stuff to say about that. And this other thing is to do with teleology. I think you said evolution has an emergent direction, which is great stuff, really interesting. Yeah, there's two parts to it, really. I mean, and I think they're connected for me, at least. The first is to do with this. Yeah, let's look at this complexity thing first. I mean, we do seem to be increasing in complexity. There's no doubt about that. It could be speciation due to kind of arms race. You know, there's certainly processes about that associated with that, or it might be other kinds of processes that I'm not that familiar with, which allow us to increase in complexity. And the production of something we call consciousness might or might not be part of that. I'm assuming that consciousness is a product, or I'm assuming you would need something quite complex in order to produce this thing called consciousness. So I'm assuming they're related. I would resist kind of reifying consciousness and reifying complexity as absolute values. I mean, they're certainly values to me, and they're values to you, and I'm assuming they're values to all humans. But as far as I can tell, there's no grounds for attributing any kind of absolute value to complexity, or saying that consciousness has an absolute value. I know we do. It is, as I said before in other videos, it is the unique human trick. You know, the birds can fly, beavers make dams, moles dig in the ground, we are conscious. And you know, that is kind of my position on that. And it's a very good trick, and it does seem to allow us to self-reflect and all those things, which may be unique, but then again, lots of things are unique. So all I'm saying there is that, you know, are we not just being chauvinistic by saying that this increasing complexity, which has brought about this thing we call consciousness, is evidence of, I don't know, the development of value in the universe, or the increasing goodness of the universe. And I suppose citing de Chardin is a good example of that. De Chardin is clearly absolutely associating the increasing of complexity with the increasing of consciousness, with the omega point. You know, there is a teleological end point which complexity is driving us towards, and it is theologically good in de Chardin. And I think he's speculating beyond the data. I don't think there is any evidence in universal terms for the absolute value of complexity in consciousness. That brings us to my second point, which is to do with teleology, and what I see as and what you call the emergent direction of evolution. But again, I think there's a real tendency, not just in yourself, but I think in all of us here, to again be very chauvinistic and very it's evolutionary chauvinism or carbon chauvinism or something like that. Because if we're saying that evolution has an emergent direction, it's almost irresistible to not think that we are the unit on which evolution works. You know, that we are part of that directionality, that we are the vanguard of that evolutionary development. We might not say that, but I think part of us thinks that. And I think it's to do with a kind of figure ground problem that we have in relation to evolution. You know, our vision of evolution, particularly our own evolution, is one of an organism in relation to an environment. And the environment acts upon the organism, and that's the kind of relationship. But that's really a figure ground problem. And it isn't that the environment is one thing and the organism another. The environment is also made of things that are in systems of change. Living things are constantly surrounded by other living things, co-evolving and evolving in relations to one another. And all those living creatures are all, from their perspective, if you like, they are all figures in a landscape. They're all figures trying to evolve against the ground of the environment. So So I don't know by what right we would place ourselves as particular figures in the ground of an undifferentiated environment. And even if we were to spread that out and say, well, it's not humans, it's living creatures, or it's not humans, it's animals, and we can forget things without central nervous systems. But again, we're plucking criteria out of nowhere there. There's no reason why we would, from a completely abstract perspective, why we would take this complex set of interrelated systems and say, well, this is the bit that we're using as the figure, and everything else is just the ground, it's just the background environment. And that would still be the case if we decided that somehow life was some kind of abstract figure that was evolving against a background of the not alive, the background of a kind of environment which is either dead or is inert or is somehow inanimate, because that's clearly not the case either. All of the environment is constantly under processes of change. Some of it's under processes of evolutionary change, some of it's under processes of physical and material change, some of it's under process of climatic change. All this stuff is changing over time, and nothing stays still. So again, there isn't a stable ground against any of this stuff figures. It's all a question of where you put your focus, it seems to me. So if we're saying that there is a teleology to the universe, if we're saying that evolution has an emergent direction, why would that be the case? Why it's all we're doing when we do that is we're looking at our local environment, and we might spread it out to the rest of life, but we're looking at our local universal environment, local environment in the universe, and imagining everything else is staying still and comparing ourselves in a way which is not usefully relativistic. I think the only way we could bring teleology in, and I wouldn't want to personally, but I think the only way we could bring teleology in is by considering the whole damn thing, you know what I mean? So that all parts of the evolutionary systems, humans, other parts of evolutionary systems, are all operating in relation to climatic systems, in relation to physical systems, in relation to expanding universe, in relation to everything that goes on, really. And thinking, has that whole kit and caboodle got a teleology? Personally, as I say, I don't think it does. But I think if you're not willing to do that, then everything else is making a bid for a kind of local centre to teleology, without really the criteria, I don't think, to support that. Okay, anything else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, evolving complexity, evolving consciousness, good thing. Great, okay, well that was a great video you shot there, thanks very much. I'm sure you know this, but you've got a really slightly irritating noise in the background. It's like one of those files you can get that puts out beta, those kind of brain synchronization noise things. I don't know if it's intentional or whether it's just on your computer, but it's giving me a headache. Thanks very much.